stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll, please.
Dr. Corman?
Here.
Ms. Deeds?
Here.
Mr. Denise?
Here.
Miller? Here. Dr. Yantel?
Here.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I'm sure everybody wants to get out for St. Patrick's Day, but not the students. All right, tonight we start by highlighting our music department and honoring several talented individuals who were chosen to perform at the Ohio Music Education Association's conference in February. Students auditioned for selections by submitting a recorded performance to judges in May of 2013. These gifted students were chosen from a pool of exceptional candidates from around the state. Please join me in honoring these talented young performers whose dedication and passion for their craft has enabled them all to achieve this outstanding honor. Chris Carlson, Adam Davidson, Brian Janice, Luke Jones, Julian Thomas are all of the All-State Choir. We have Jesse Pizzo, who is part of the All-State Band, and we have Will Ford, who is part of the All-State Orchestra. So please, if you are in attendance, come on up and let's celebrate your honor.
He's home in bed. Don't know yet. They tested him for mono.
And we're going to take some paparazzi photos. So come on over here and line up. Make me look good. All right.
You're asking a lot.
I know. You want to look at moms and dads over here?
Camera love you guys.
Congratulations. Next, we are going to honor 3 members of the Granville High School wrestling team whose preparation and practice paid off in a big way this season. Wrestlers Dane Stephanie, Will Navin, and Christian Price all qualified for and participated in the state tournament this year. This year was Christian's first trip to state. He finished his season with a 53-5 record, accumulating 119 varsity victories thus far in his wrestling career. Christian was the sectional champion and finished 3rd at the district meet. He was also runner-up in the LCL tournament. Christian had 53 wins in a single season, which set a new record for GHS wrestling. Both Dane and Will returned to the state competition for the second time in their careers, making them the first GHS wrestlers to earn multiple trips to the state competition. Will finished with a record of 45-8, accumulating 123 career varsity victories. This season he was sectional champ, finished 3rd at the district meet, and was champion in his weight class at the LCL. He was the first GHS wrestler to qualify for the state tournament in consecutive seasons. Will is also one of the only 2 GHS wrestlers to distinguish themselves as academic All-Ohio wrestlers. Dane finished the season with a 47-4 record, accumulating 137 career varsity victories. He claimed champion titles in the Marion County Wrestling Invitational, the LCL tournament, and the district tournament. Dane is only the second GHS wrestler to win a district championship in the past 30 years. In addition, he was selected as the second team All-Metro by the Central Ohio Wrestling Coaches. These young men are true leaders in their sport. We are proud to have them representing our athletic program in the school, and also thank Marvin Bright, their coach, for their tutelage. So, this tutelage, if they're here, there. And come on over here.
Get it, get it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah, you gotta take the opportunity. I've been a wrestling coach for years, and whenever I got into trouble, I had to wrestle him, which was very often. So, that's why I started playing hockey. All right. Next, we're going to recognize athletes from our high school swim team who once again returned to the state competition this year. Under the direction of new coach John Sands, the girls continued to dominate at meets throughout the season. The team finished 4th at state, only 5 points behind the 3rd place winners and 9 points behind 2nd. The strong team of Keely Laverne, Cassandra Mestermaker, Abby Stone, and Sydney King finished as repeat state champions in the 200 medley relay. This year I couldn't make it up to that event, and I was really bummed. It was one of those things that too many places, too many times. So I was really upset that I didn't get up there, but I heard it was, and Ryan was texting me the whole time, so heard it was great. Other highlights from the meet were impressive finishes by Sydney King, who placed 3rd in the 200 freestyle and 2nd in the 500 freestyle. Keely Laverne, who placed 6th in the 200 IM and 9th in the 100 back. Cassandra Mestermaker, who placed 2nd in the 100 breaststroke and 16th in the 200 IM. Abby Stone, who placed 2nd in the 200 IM and 5th in the 100 back. And the 400 relay of Stone, Laverne, Grisset, and King placed 2nd. And the 200 medley relay of Cassandra Mestermaker, Danny Roberts, McKenna Dunlap, and Paige Grisset placed 14th. So that's the girls. And then the boys also faced tough competition this year and came away with a 13th place finish at state. Highlights for the boys included Timmy Spishiger, who placed 7th in the 200 and 500 free, Sam Wagner, who placed 9th in the 50 free and 11th in the 100 free, Grant Stahl, who placed 13th in the 200 IM and 100 fly. Timmy, Grant, and Sam were joined by Tin Lee in the 200 free relay, placing 11th, and the 400 free relay, the team placed 12th overall. We are proud of the commitment of all these athletes to their sport and honor the spirit and drive that was required to achieve such success. So I'd like to welcome, do we want to do this all together? Excellent. John, please join us. And here we have Paige. And John, you can pass the rest of these out. Thank you. So let's turn and take some photos. Okay, moms and dads, do we want to take pictures over here? All right. Will it help you if we come over here? Here, come on over here. My phone's going off.
That's all right, I got it.
You got it?
Yeah.
Sure. All right, parents, this is a race. Who can get that on Facebook? So, all right. Our next honoree had to go home. She had a family engagement that she had to take care of. But it's Nancy Nesbitt, who is an intervention specialist with the district. She is being honored for receiving the T. Wesley Travel Grant. Each year year, teachers can apply for the grant by submitting an application to the Licking County Foundation. Grant submissions are reviewed and then awarded to educators who are committed to expanding their knowledge in their respective fields through travel. Nancy plans to travel to China and Singapore this summer to learn more about the Orton-Gillingham reading method used to teach children and autism and with dyslexia to read. Upon returning, she will share and apply her learning with children in our district. We recognize Nancy for her continued love of learning and wish her the best on her travels this summer. Mr. Bernath, and we have 23 kids in China right now. I was actually linking with him on Saturday morning, and everybody's doing fine, so that's good. But we're excited about Nancy and her travels this summer. So congratulations, Nancy Nesbitt. All right, our last honoree tonight has proven that his passion for teaching has truly made a difference in the lives of his students. Granville High School science teacher Mike Bate is this year's recipient of the Coughlin Automotive Group 2014 You Make a Difference Award. Each year, educators from schools in Licking County are nominated for the award by students or parents in each district. This year, Granville High School student Kelsey Riffle nominated Mike because of his ability to simplify, I can't even say, complex problems and teach them in a way students can connect with and understand. He also devotes much of his personal time before and after school to work with students needing extra help. Mike's love of science has inspired many of his students and to pursue careers in the field upon graduation. We thank him for embracing his passion and sharing it with his students. So Mike, I will tell you that you have quite a few fans on Facebook as well, because I saw a string of congratulatory posts because of all the efforts that you do on a day-to-day basis in the classroom. So come on up, Mike. Physics geek t-shirt.
No, GHS Varsity Physics.
Oh,
I've got the
okay.
Physics Geek t-shirts.
Okay, all right. I knew some of them had it. So that concludes our accommodations for tonight. And I know that you would all love to stay and watch our board meeting, but we understand if you would like to leave at this time, feel free to do so.
Make them stay.
That's how it's spelled.
Yeah, that's
Are you parents
yeah.
for
Yeah.
honor society kids
Yeah.
to come to the first class board meeting?
Yeah.
No.
Stay for the whole thing, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
might have to propose that.
I like that.
They can get points for coming to stay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good night, guys. Night, Becky. Brian sends his regrets. Brian sends his regrets.
Well, you can get his.
Mary. She's being serious. I love her haircut.
And that brings us to our staff reports. And first, we are going to have Mr. Matt Hurst from Granville High School talk to us a little bit about the ALICE training that took place, but really it's more of an update on what we've been doing with safety and security. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Hurst.
Is that good for you guys to follow?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. Like Jeff said, and I do appreciate Jeff working in here at the beginning. After this presentation, I'll excuse myself. I have to go to a 7:30 at the high school. This is a quick refresher, little update for you, not only on ALICE training that happened at the beginning of March, but also, as he said, on some of the history that's gone behind some of this work. Back to January of 2012, Dustin Grimm, who is the Dean of Students at the middle school, he and I attended a workshop or seminar that was hosted up at Denison University by a lady that goes by the name of Dr. Amy Klinger. She is a school safety expert, and not only does she teach classes in this area, but she also acts as a consultant in this area. And so Dusty and I went up to that workshop and really took away a lot of very good advice that we started to implement pretty quickly back here in the district. One of those changes that we made was the movement to leveled lockdowns. The traditional method of a lockdown was really pretend like the building is empty. That was the philosophy behind it. And as we learned from the Alice training, the lockdowns were created initially for use in prisons. You would lock down a cell so that you could maintain order. But they have proven to be a very ineffective way to respond to something like a violent intruder inside of a school building. And so we moved towards more of a leveled lockdown modality. And what that means is that on a level 1 lockdown, for example, you're not restricting things nearly as much as you are with a level 3. A great example of a level 1 lockdown would be a medical emergency. And so you go over to the PA and you announce that we are moving into a medical lockdown that's level 1. And so all you're doing is you're restricting student movement in the building. And that's really for student privacy. It's for access with EMS personnel. And so you've got that type of a lockdown response all the way up to lock your doors, barricade. Depending on information, you can even flee the building. If you do decide to barricade, you've got 3 principles that you keep in mind: delay, deter, and defend. On average, it takes law enforcement about 5 to 8 minutes to respond to a building. And so all you're doing is killing time and waiting for the good guys and the cavalry to come in if you delay. Deterring would be a barricade or something like that that would secure the entryways of the classrooms. And then defending is very obvious. It's grab what's ever in sight, and you're gonna defend that classroom like it's your own. We did a lot of enhanced communications. Rob Sexton had a lot to do with that. That was one of our biggest improvements that we've made as we've moved towards more of an Alice mindset. One of the pillars of Alice is this communications piece. And so we were moving from a point where we only had PA access in our buildings from the main office. So you can imagine down in the commons at the high school, an incident happens and someone has to run to the high school office to access the PA to let the rest of the building know what's going on. It's not a good situation. And so, like I said, one of those pillars of Alice is to enhance those communications so you can give real-time information to people so they can make decisions on the fly. And so what we did last summer was we moved over to a system where we had access from every phone in the building. And so the communications is a dramatic improvement. And what that does is, like I said, it allows us to give real-time information in a situation like that so that teachers can then respond based on that information. In these situations, you will never eliminate risk. And so what we've moved towards is how can we reduce risk the fastest or the greatest? And the communications piece really plays in. You're also familiar with security enhancements that took place in the buildings last summer as well. An example of that would be a buzzing system that exists now at every single building in the district. I will brag on Barb Helwig a little bit. She's the secretary at the high school, and if you read the article in the Sentinel, the Alice trainers were very, very clear in pointing out that she was the only secretary, not in our district, but countywide, as they have tried to sneak into buildings. She was the only one that was able to stop the person from gaining access to the building. They gave her very high praise for that. But those buzzing systems are something that's, it's again, it's taking security to another level because we now control who accesses the buildings. One of the things that we also took away from that workshop with Dr. Klinger was the idea of drill compliance versus a best practice mindset. The state of Ohio requires 1 security drill per year, whereas with fire drills, they require 1 every month. There hasn't been a death in a fire in a school building in over 50 years. That's not a knock on fire drills. We will continue to do those things happily. But what we've moved towards is more of a quarterly lockdown drill, something that we can start to train our students in how we want them to respond. So the Alice training that took place the first week in March is also the training that will take place the first week in April at the intermediate and elementary schools. The first week in March, we were able to train half of the staff, being the high school and middle school staffs. And it was a presentation that was done by the Licking County Sheriff's Office and a man named Gus Moore. Gus Moore is employed, obviously, by the Sheriff's Office. And I think that one of his full-time jobs, really, with the Sheriff's Office is to go around the county and offer these trainings to interested parties. It's something that comes at no cost to us, which is a very nice benefit. And he was also accompanied by, I would say that they had between 10 and 15 total Licking County Sheriff's personnel, SWAT team members, Gus, and a few other guys as well that were there to help us on this training. And so what the training consisted of was a 1-hour presentation. It gives a little bit of the history that I've shared with you as schools have learned from their mistakes and as they've moved from that lockdown mentality to more of a level lockdown, enhanced communications, give people the ability to choose and flee the building. One of the great lines that Gus uses is that if he's coaching his students on how to respond in the event of a violent intruder, the first thing he tells them to do is run. He doesn't tell them to lock the door and hide in a corner. The best option for them is to run, because if it is a school shooter, all of a sudden you've got a shooting target versus a sitting target. So again, we're not eliminating risk 100%, we're greatly reducing our odds in these situations. That presentation was followed by 2 breakout sessions, and so the group was broken down into 2 smaller groups. One of the groups participated in a medical training, basic trauma care, really, if this type of a situation were to arise. And the second group participated in an ALICE simulation that put us in classrooms where we did barricade. We also learned some takedown techniques and some disarming techniques. And then after the end of that second hour, then the groups rotated those breakout sessions. So you can see here that there's some very hands-on training. Marvin Bright definitely showed his worth as a wrestling coach, because that guy went down very quickly when Marvin went out there. The word they were using to stop the drill was pineapple. And pineapple was said very, very quickly when Marvin was out there. This is a great shot. Mary Geyer was able to take these pictures for us. This is a great shot of some of those things that we were learning in the sessions. You can see here that they've just taken classroom objects. They're masks, they're wearing paintball masks because the intruders are shooting with airsoft guns, and so they want to protect them. But you can see they've taken classroom materials, with the exception of that ratchet strap, which will probably pretty soon become a classroom material. And they have effectively barricaded this classroom. So this person was not able to gain entry to this classroom simply because they had a ratchet strap tied around the handle, and they were also using the barricading method. Very effective, very low cost. I mean, you can buy a ratchet strap for $4, and in bulk you could probably buy them for cheaper than that. The feedback has been great. One of the things that Lisa and I and Ryan asked for after the training was, if you have thoughts, we know that you have them, please email them to us. Email questions, concerns, ideas. Gus Moore and his guys even made themselves available after the training to go to individual classrooms to walk through a specific classroom with a teacher. And that was something that several of the teachers found very valuable. That was also something that some of the teachers did not take advantage of. Understandably, it had been a long day. It was about 5:30 by that point. We'd been there since 7:30 in the morning. And so what we're going to do for the next steps is we're going to take that staff feedback, and at the end of the school year, I've already been talking with Gus about coming back to the district to work literally one-on-one with every classroom teacher to sit down and talk through what their plan is for barricading, what their plan is for flight from that classroom, and then also to really create a supply list of things that they might need. So maybe we're going to purchase 200 ratchet straps so that we can effectively keep that door closed if this type of a situation does pop up. The other thing that we're working on is something called a threat assessment process. The ALICE training is really chapter 2 in this book. Threat assessment is chapter 1. Threat assessment is a systematic process that allows us to identify students that we have concern over in advance of a situation that would cause us to go into an ALICE response, if that makes sense. So as we develop the threat assessment process, again, with the help of Dr. Klinger, that's something that we'll be able to implement at each of the buildings across the district, so that when an English teacher sees something concerning written on a paper, it's not a guessing game as to what happens. There's a process that's thought out, that's advised by an expert, and that we're able to replicate over and over and over again as needed. The other thing that we're working on right now is a reunification plan. Let's say that an incident did cause an evacuation of the building, and any building, and we did have to go to our reunification sites. A reunification plan is just a way, again, to systematically reunite any student that has been evacuated with their parents or guardians. It's crossing your T's and dotting your I's to make sure that you've accounted for everyone, that they've been connected with the correct person, and that the reunification has indeed been a success. We've done a tremendous amount of work, not just myself, but maintenance, Rob, Mary, all of the people that I mentioned, building principals, have really bought into this 100%. It's clear though that this is like an onion, and as we think we've got a layer accomplished, we uncover something else that we need to kind of tend to. And so I think that it's going to be an ongoing process here for the next few years. Once we tick off the threat assessment, once we tick off the reunification, then I'm sure something else will reveal itself. But all of this is being done in the hope that we never use it. You all understand that. But we would rather, again, as I think you would echo, we would rather be prepared, we'd rather have a process, we'd rather be well thought out with this, so that if something does happen, that our response is what our community wants it to be. Any questions for me before I excuse myself? Yeah.
Matt, when you're talking about the communication during a threat that might be happening, and so that teachers can make their choice about what to do with their kids, are there cameras now posted, or is this just somebody sees something out their door, they report it on the PA system? How is that taking place?
Yeah, right now it's most likely going to be somebody sees something visually in the hallway, and then they're going to report that via the PA. Rob is working, I know that Rob has met with, I think, about every building at this point to take a look at, for example, camera access on entryways and exits in our buildings. That was something that, again, we identified as a committee that said, we need to address this, and so let's take a look at what that looks like cost-wise this summer to do some upgrades there. We do not have someone seated like a security person, exactly. So it really would be a reactionary measure where they see something, where they hear something. One of the other things that happened in that Alice training was that they fired blank rounds right outside the theater so that we could get an idea for what that sounds like in an empty hallway. I don't think I'm alone. I've never heard gunshots in a school before. And so that was helpful for me to know what to listen for. You know, is that a maintenance guy on the roof, or is that something I should be concerned about?
No, I think this is obviously, as you said, Matt, we hope never to have to need this, but it's much better to be proactive and prepared than to have to just be reactionary. So thank you for the training and the coordination. I guess, you know, speaking for myself, and I think we'd probably like to continue to hear about how the ongoing training is progressing, and identification of resources that are in place and additional resources that might be needed as you move forward. But tremendous work, and commend you for doing it, so thank you.
One of the things from a resource perspective, every year we budget resources from our home improvement budget. Anything that has a physical life of 5 years or greater, and so a lot of the things that Matt discussed, specifically with the security cameras, are part of that conversation from a resource allocation perspective. But I appreciate Mr. Durst giving you that detail today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay, and yes, Ron. This might be the shortest staff report of the evening, which is the high school, middle school, intermediate school, and elementary school handbooks. What I'm going to report as far as the first reading is very simple. First of all, our philosophy has been that we over the last 3 to 4 years have really been on a journey to make the K-6 and the 7-12 handbooks align and make sure that there's consistency from K-6 all the way through 12th grade. And we want the experience for the students and the parents to be somewhat consistent across the entire district. So there are going to be standard updates to the handbook, updating course assignments, those kinds of things, making changes to the year, all the logistical little changes that take place. The one main change that we are including in the intermediate school handbook is we are updating including the policy on bring your own device into the intermediate school, because when we initiated that bring your own device to school initiative, it was a 7-12 initiative, and we didn't include it in the intermediate school handbook. So we do allow devices to be utilized at the intermediate school, and so we felt it would be appropriate and necessary to include that language so parents understand what it is kids can do or not do with the technology that they bring. So that's the one, I would say, clear change from last year to this year. And that concludes my report. But there will be a second reading next meeting in April, and you'll have the full document at that time. And that document is always on our website.
Thank you.
And that takes me,
Thank you, I can keep my report shorter than that.
I challenge you.
I just want to do a quick update on the lunch bid. I think there's been a little bit of misconception as to why we're doing this and what's going on right now. We're in the final year right now of a 5-year contract with AVI to provide the lunch services and food services to the district. By law, we can't do a contract more than 5 years, and we have to rebid it. And so this is the rebidding process that we go through, we've gone through 5 years ago, at that time when we actually took it out for the first time. So it's just a rebidding process required by law. What we actually signed is a 1-year contract with up to 4 renewals of the 1-year contract to get to 5 years. The contract can be ended any time at the end of any one of those 5 years with notice by either side. The process, where we are right now, Kathy, primarily with me working with her, has put together a request for proposal. That was sent to ODE last week. ODE must approve the RFPs before we can post them, to make sure we're meeting all of the state and federal guidelines for what we're requiring of our food service provider. We will hopefully get it back from them within the next week or week and a half. The timeline from this point on, assuming we get it back in a timely manner from ODE, is that we're planning to post the RFP by March 31st. Hopefully no later than that. If we have to go later than that, then it's going to throw our entire schedule off because of the requirements we have to meet for posting. There will be a mandatory on-site walkthrough for any potential bidder on April 14th, where they will see each of the facilities and each of the buildings so they can make a coherent proposal, knowing what they're expecting. The bids themselves will be due on April 23rd here to the district office. The bids will be opened at 11 o'clock that morning. Anything coming beyond 11 o'clock will not be considered timely and will not be looked at. The lunch committee will do vendor interviews probably during the week of April the 28th for whatever vendors we choose to continue down the road looking at. And then we will be making a recommendation to the board to approve a new contract at the May meeting. If we do not get anything back from ODE by March 31st, that is going to have to push everything back because we must have at least 2 weeks posting before we can do the mandatory walkthrough. So that's why if we can't get it posted by the 31st, we can't do the walkthrough on the 14th, and we'll need to probably push everything back, including possibly not being able to take board action until June, if it ends up being really late on ODE's part. So just want to give you that update just so you're aware of what's going on and some of the ideas that are out there just to alleviate some of the issues there.
Are you concerned at all about turnaround time with ODE?
That's always a concern with ODE.
They have less staff now.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I asked.
Yeah, so, they've got almost 3 weeks to get it from the time we send it to them to get it back to us to meet the deadline. And Kathy has communicated with them the time frame that we would like to stay on.
Mhm.
And hopefully that will resonate with them so that they review it and get it back to us and we can meet that deadline. Well, at this point, all we can do is hope that will be the case.
Mike, when they do the mandatory walkthrough, are they mostly looking at the high school facilities because that's where the food prep takes place and then is distributed elsewhere?
They'll look at all 3 buildings, because
Okay.
there is food preparation that's done at the intermediate school as well.
Okay.
So they'll look at the facilities in the high school and the intermediate school, and then also serving facilities at the elementary school. Yeah, because they'll need that to know what they're working with, and that'll be a big thing for them to, they have to provide a 21-day menu as part of the bid process. And so, they've got to see what the layout is to see what is and is not possible with the space and equipment that we have.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Moves us into board discussion, and you remember that last meeting, we had a similar board discussion item, and I'll let Mike kick off that conversation.
Yeah, it's really, there's not a whole lot of introduction to this. Nothing much has occurred since we met last month as far as anything, as far as costs or ideas or anything. So at this point, I think we have the same issues. There's no fiscal impact this year to doing it, or for the upcoming school year for doing it. The first fiscal impact would occur in the 15-16 school year, assuming that the same state funding formula is in place as is in place right now, or at least something that looks remotely similar to it, if not exactly the same. So that's probably all the level of introduction that we need for going into the discussion.
I guess, after we had some coverage and some discussion about it a month ago, I've got a number of community members that have stepped up to express opinions one way and the other. We also had a great group at the finance committee that got together to talk about kind of the financial aspects of the proposal. And I've been thinking a lot about kind of specifically, again, those financial aspects and kind of where this fits in. And the thing that resonates with me most is the fact that it has zero potential for financial contribution in next school year, right? So given that, I've been considering, the numbers, the game is basically, it's about a wash in terms of the finances of the income we receive from the state compared to our direct cost of educating students, right? And for receiving a few more incremental students, we probably don't have any incremental cost, right? But I kind of consider this to be a very long-term decision. It's kind of a 13-year thing. You're going to get kids in kindergarten, and you're not going to want to kick them out with this process, so it seems like a very long-term thing. And the state funding model seems to be very dynamic, right? And maybe it'll be more stable, and maybe there will be a cap or a guarantee of some type, and maybe we'll be in or off that. I don't know if we're going to have more information on that a year from now than we do now, but I know we can't have less information on a year from now. So I'm kind of in favor of considering to postpone a decision on it for a year, right? Because we know that for next school year, again, it won't have any positive financial ramifications for us. And it seems like a lot of this is, sort of financially motivated based on the, current funding model, or the funding model that will potentially be in place a year from now. So because that's dynamic and so forth, I still want to get more feedback from the community. Some people have expressed concerns or questions about it. I'm still open to it if it really is a need from a staff perspective. If this is a really high priority, so this is how we can recruit new staff or retain staff in a way, then I think that's something seriously to be considered. But from a financial perspective, it doesn't really seem to be a big motivator for us, right? And if it is, then maybe we should look in general at, how we work enrollment, and where our enrollment forecasts are going to be. Maybe there'll be some changes with housing growth, or maybe there'll be some other changes with on students and so forth. So based on the feedback I've gotten and kind of my consideration of the financial aspects, I think it's prudent potentially to consider postponing the decision on implementing a policy for some time, at least until we have more certainty about what the future funding model is. So that's a little bit where my head is on it, and I appreciate your thoughts, and if you've heard anything back from community members, because I think that's the key thing, is getting that feedback.
I've heard back from some, and actually people are generally supportive, but with the caveat that they're unsure about the funding model, it having been so up in the air and dynamic, as you said. And so, there were questions about that. And so, so people who have talked to me have been generally supportive, but, how much do we really know? I mean, how sure are we that things aren't going to change such that, adding more students might not be a benefit? But And as you said, since we don't, we will have more information next year, and we're not meeting, it's not going to impact us as much this year. I would also be willing to table it, although I am still open to it. I think we need to be open to sort of these ideas for other types of funding as things get tighter and tighter. So I'm not entirely opposed to it, but I think the timing of it is such that we can wait and still gather more information.
Go ahead, Katie.
So my only addition to that would be, so what if we're in the same spot a year from now? Anyway, because that kind of seems to be where we keep finding ourselves. Should we at least think about what our plan might be a year from now? Basically, if we're in the same spot, agreeing if we postpone it, what's our plan B then? Because it sounds like nobody's horribly opposed to it. So do we need a plan B, assuming we're postponing it for a year, if we're in the same spot, so that we don't take undue time? Because there are people who want to enroll their children and they need to make plans and those kinds of things. So we ought to be considerate of those people, teachers as well.
I think to that point, it's a challenge right now because we know that the likelihood of us having a lot of information a year from now at the same time is pretty slim because, we have the gubernatorial election in November, and then, probably February he'll release some type of budget proposal.
Depends who
Yeah,
wins.
yeah, that's true.
Because it's a later date if there's a change in the governor than if there's not a change in the governor. Yeah, I mean, at this point next year, the most that we're going to know is what whoever the governor is has proposed. We'll have the introduced version of the budget at this point next year. It probably won't even have much in the way of House hearings at this point. If we're talking about the middle of March, there probably would be some preliminary House hearings, but that's about it. There probably would not be a substitute House version of the budget by this point. So,
which doesn't help people trying to make decisions on whether to enroll their children.
Right.
So I think that's the challenge, but it's a challenge because of the timing of the budget cycle.
It's hard to know what to plan for.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Anything else? I've heard mixed reactions. Some folks who think it's a good idea, and some folks who don't think it's a good idea. And I think it speaks to the fact that it's not yet fully formed yet, for a number of reasons. One is we don't know what we don't know about state funding. Another is, frankly, we've only sort of floated this idea in the last 30 days and haven't really fully developed or communicated what its impact would be, what the benefits would be. I think I favor postponing it, primarily because we don't see a fiscal impact this year if we were to enact it, and because there is, as we know, and as the Sentinel recently published, there is a new development that we've just learned of that's going to be in the district. Don't know what the impact of that will be yet on enrollment. I would say that I think this is the kind of idea that we should explore. I commend Mike and Jeff for their creativity, for thinking really outside of the prototypical box here to address our issues with declining enrollment and issues with questionable state funding. I think in the best circumstances, this could be a net positive in terms of revenue to the district. I don't think that our incremental costs in taking on an additional 15, 20, 25 children, if that were the number, certainly would wipe out the benefit that we would get from state funding. And so I think it has really the potential to be a positive. And I applaud you for working through the issue and suggesting it. And I think it's something, to Katie's point, I don't think we should simply table it and not take it up again until this time next year. I really think it needs to be part of an ongoing discussion here and in the community, and certainly with folks who would be impacted, as would any other potentially impactful economic decision that we would make. So I'm not opposed, for the reasons that I stated, to tabling it, but I don't want to see us put it in a box and not talk about it for a year. I really want to see us keep the discussion going. I think, I also think, as we flesh the idea out, if it takes shape the way I think it will, I suspect that folks will get on board and be supportive of it. And if it turns out that the facts are different than I understand them, then that won't be the case, and then we can always decide not to pursue it. But I do want to see us keep discussing it.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else?
All right. So my directive is keep it on a burner. And don't put it on the back burner, but keep it on a burner so that we can continue to gather information about it.
Board reports, I will start.
Public comment.
Public comment, sorry, excuse me. At this point in time, we will have public comment. If you would like to address the board, please come to the podium and state your name and address and speak for up to 3 to 5 minutes. Would anybody like to address the board at this time? Seeing as there is nobody, I will go on to board reports. Just quick update, I don't have a CTEC, anything to update on CTEC at this point. In the month that we actually meet tomorrow, and it's been winter, so not a lot is going on. But legislatively, Mike and Jeff and I went to a legislative update meeting last week, and this is all the legislation that's going on related to education. I'm not going to go over all of it. I'm just going to really highlight 2 things. One is the teacher evaluation system, substitute Senate Bill 229, which has unanimously passed the Senate and is now in the House Education Committee. And it's the bill that's going to greatly give us more flexibility in evaluating teachers. Teachers who are rated highly effective or accomplished, I can never remember the words that they decided on, won't have to be evaluated every year, but every 3 years. And then the second skilled, I guess, is the second one, and they're like every other year. So that gives a lot of flexibility. It gives flexibility in the percent of a teacher's performance evaluation that is based on student growth. And there's a few other things in there, but that has passed the Senate unanimously, and we're waiting to hear from the House Education Committee whether or not that they're going to put any changes into it. I think they're trying to push that through fairly quickly. So hopefully there'll be more of an update next month. And then the one that actually has passed, which I'm sure you've read about, is the Calamity Days legislation. Finally came through, and they passed that we can waive up to an additional 4 days, but that's 4 days after we've used our blizzard bags, which we've done in we already had 5 days, and we did 3 more blizzard bag days, but we can waive up to an additional 4 days. We are actually right at our limit. But we have the intermediate school with the water main break has 1 extra day that we will be able to waive, and they won't have to make that up. So, but did we ever determine whether or not we have to have a resolution?
They have not determined whether we need to have a resolution.
Okay.
So we may have to, by resolution, waive that 1 additional day for GIS.
But we can, so they won't have to make that up. So.
Let's wait till the weather's nice and we're done with that.
Exactly. So, yeah, DC just got 8 inches of snow. My brother posted on his Facebook page. I was like, thank God it wasn't us, because I don't know what I would do. But, as there's lots of the mid-biennium budget review just came through, and there's some education things that are in there, but they're breaking the bill up and passing it on to up to 15 different committees, and so the timing on those is really unknown. But as any of those that affect us come into play, I'll give you more of an update at that point. So
I would say the one thing to look for in the MBR is the College Credit Plus, which the Ohio Board of Regents was required by December 31st to submit a plan to the governor to outline what they would like to see as post-secondary options, dual enrollment, coursework for students in K-12. And so instead of that being a separate piece of legislation, they did include it in the MBR, but I do think that they are going to separate that out within the MBR for separate public debate. And I would say that's probably a good thing, because there are some costs to the local taxpayers embedded in that is really about college credit. And so that broadens the scope of what K-12 is about. And so I think there's some questions and concerns related to that I think we'll probably get some updates from our organizations.
Any other updates from other committees? Education Foundation?
I'll mention the Granville Education Foundation with a new group of trustees that's motivated and of diverse backgrounds and so forth, some of which are new to Granville and some of which have been here for a long time. Many came in with not quite understanding all the other organizations. So it was a great initiative that GEF did as a part of their spring grant process to go out and survey all of our support organizations. And they basically asked, so, you know, where do you get your money, who are you formed by, what is your purpose, how do you support the schools? And out of this, they created a poster. It's posted on all the schools.
I was looking around to see if we had one. I know it's upstairs.
So you might see this poster, and it's got, you know, 6 or 7 different support organizations, and it really clearly outlines, you know, kind of what their methods of granting things to the school are, who their supporters are, and who to contact, and things like that. So I thought it was just a really neat initiative that the GEF did to kind of bring together all the various support organizations just to kind of understand them a little bit better. And I think everybody learned something out of that process that hopefully we can, you know, keep that synergy up as we go forward between the groups. I'll say also that the GF is in the midst of a spring funding campaign for the grants. I'm not sure exactly whether those are due or when those are due and so forth, but though you'll be hearing more about those, I'm sure, in the near future.
I believe the grants are due April 2nd.
Due April 2nd. Last year was a very good year for the investments of the foundation, right? So they have a lot of income from investments, and they're very motivated to make a big difference, right? And they hope that they can use not only recent contributions, but also, you know, income from their investments in potentially a more significant way this year for additional grants. If those come in through the grant cycle, or potentially another grant cycle that's being proposed for later in the year for a more significant investment of some sort. So I think it's really great that the new trustees have stepped up in a way and want to continue to do great things and use all the resources that they're at their disposal to help out. So I've heard great positive things come out there, and stay tuned for some fantastic grant awards, I'm sure.
The Granville Foundation meets tomorrow night.
Just briefly, the levy committee, Jay Snyder and his cadre of volunteers are organizing and preparing part of the campaign. Again, this is the renewal of the existing permanent improvement levy, which goes to fund physical assets, perhaps including some of the security measures that Mr. Durst referenced earlier this evening, and to preserve the physical assets in the district. So more to come as that campaign takes shape, but I thank, as I know we all do, the volunteers who lead that effort for the benefit of the community.
Okay. Action agenda, please.
That takes us to 10.01. We have one paid leave of absence request.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Mike, go.
Mr. Mayor,
Aye.
Ms. Dees,
Aye.
Mr. Dees,
Aye.
Dr. Lindell, Dr. Schwarman.
Aye.
10.02 is the Tibby Leslie Travel Grant Award, and we are accepting that grant of $3,000.
So moved.
Second.
I have a question.
Yes.
It's not about the grant, but why Singapore for Art and Gillingham?
Apparently, the person who does the training is in those 2 locations. So I think she's traveling to 2 locations that this person that is providing the training is going to be at.
I didn't know if they had some
Yeah.
really cool thing that they were doing in Singapore in particular with it.
I think I've seen this grant come through before for our district. Is it not annual though, but it's what range is this
I
Part of that?
believe,
Is it a county thing, or is it?
yeah, it is a county thing, and it's
Once-
run by the Licking County
Foundation.
And I believe when I first came in 2011, I think it's an every 2-year funding cycle. So we had a person that was, I believe, our Latin teacher at the time that did a travel grant.
That's fantastic, right? I think it fits well with the, global spirit of education that we're going after, so congratulations, Ms. Desmond, and thanks to the organization.
Do you know when she's traveling? Is that
This
the
summer.
summer? Do you know when?
In June.
In June?
Correct?
I believe so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Mike?
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Mantel?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Sexton, would you do me the honor? I have a treat for you in the middle of the meeting to set up the approval of the Fuel Up to Play grant. Meredith Urban's classroom, or PE classes, put together a video for the Fuel Up to Play 60 grant, and they were actually the grand prize winners and received $2,500 to fund outdoor and equipment for working out. So I wanted to share with you their video.
Very well done.
So, obviously, Meredith and her children are very passionate about the Fuel Up to Play 360 grant process, and this is probably, I believe, her 3rd or 4th grant that they've been awarded. So, obviously, the kids had a lot of fun, and those tumblers were being spotted, although they didn't need it. They did not need it at all. So, with that.
We need a motion?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions?
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's great. Congratulations to all of them.
Is there anybody any particular students who, or was it really very much a group effort?
Yeah, it was a group
Okay.
effort.
Because I'd like to see them come in and
Yeah, do some.
present to us.
Present.
Yeah.
I'm not dancing.
Yeah,
I'm not
I've
dancing.
had administrators dance before, remember?
As long as we don't have to show our
Yes.
moves. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, Mark. you can
Mr.
do it.
President, and Jim Fury was the one that put the video, she did all the work, all the editing, so
Okay.
she deserves some.
Terrific.
Yes, thank you very much for bringing that. And it's hosted in ACES too,
Correct.
which is our internal repository of videos that we utilize.
Videos, PDFs, pictures, audio files, things like that.
Cool. Created by Mr. Sexton. So, kudos all around.
Yeah, how do you access that?
Actually, can,
What's that?
Is there such thing as an access to ACES too, that you can
Is
go
it-
watch or tune in or
Yeah.
something?
When we post, that's where you go.
yeah, oh, okay.
Yeah, the district website, there are links under staff, students, and
Okay.
parents. Some videos are public, and some videos are not.
Yeah.
So, to protect, students and that, so some require a login. You can use your email login and access all of those.
Excellent.
So.
Thank you.
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, the next item, 10.04, is the contract, annual contract for ACT. This is for testing services related to the high school and, of course, examinations that we have been utilizing over the last 5 years. And this contract is over $25,000, therefore it needs board approval.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments?
How much is it? It's a significant amount.
It's about 33.
It's a little over 30,000.
Yeah,
Was that what it was last year?
yeah, it's very similar.
Is it a competitive bid process, or is this the only provider that's authorized?
This is the only provider.
Yeah.
Because it's ACT.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
College Board.
Thank you.
I do expect there to be other providers entering into that game with park assessments and other
Mhm.
things, but right now ACT has, just like PSAT.
Right.
That'd be interesting. If there's some competition there to see what options are on how to operate that.
SAT's changing, it's June now, but ACT's eclipsed them, so.
Well, it'll be interesting, when there's a piece of legislation that wants to repeal the use of park assessments, and so, and have the state the State Board of Education make up the assessment. So, that could be
Which is
another player in the game.
something we're not in favor of.
Yes, not so much. Well, particularly because they want it approved by the fall. If this
Yeah.
this bill passes, they want that approved by the fall. And then implement the end of next school year, right? Yeah.
Just whip some tests up.
Which is interesting, given the fact that part of their problem with the park assessments is they haven't been vetted enough. Or tested enough to know how good they are. Anyway, I digress. Mike, you can take your roll, please.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Ms. Leeds?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
That brings us to 11.01, A through C9. And once I get the motion, I will talk a little bit about both of the others.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. I'm actually going to start, I will 9 and work my way through a little bit. We have 2 bus drivers that have resigned, and so with appreciation of service, we'll accept those resignations. I will tell you that we have been advertising for bus drivers. We are low on people that are in our sub-pool and in need of drivers. So we've posted an ad with the Columbus Dispatch, we posted one with the Newark Advocate, and we're posting on several job sites to try and get more bus drivers. And understand that it's a difficult job, but we need a few good people to help us out, and the requirement is a CDL license, so.
And this is a problem that is not unique to Granville.
Correct.
A lot of districts are having trouble keeping their supply of drivers where it needs to be.
Now I'm going to jump around a little bit more. I have the recommended contracts for administrators that range from either a 2-year contract to a 1-year contract. And I will make note of Todd Rogers, who is the elementary principal, has a 1-year contract. And then in the, towards the end of the agenda, you will see Todd Rogers' retirement, resignation for the purpose of retirement. So obviously, Mr. Rogers has made the ultimate decision to retire December 31 of 2014, and I will talk a little bit more about the hiring process for that position in a couple of weekly communications I'll put out to staff and to the community. But it is our orientation to post that position as soon as possible and go through the selection process for the beginning of next year. Therefore, we don't have a gap in transition from one leadership to another. So wanted to highlight that. And we also have 2 other people that are retiring, Ray Colleen, who is a middle school teacher, and so and Bonnie Heater, a bus aide. So obviously, we'll make that recommendation with appreciation of their service. We also have extended time contracts for the 14-15 school year and a couple more extended time contracts for the 13-14 school year. And just so you know that we have not added days of service. These are very consistent with what we approved last year. And all of these are time-sheeted, so if you're approving up to that amount of time, and if they don't time-sheet that time, then they don't get paid, okay? And we have supplementals, and obviously, we always appreciate the donations and gifts. We are accepting $6,000 from the Granville Elementary School PTO to purchase smart boards for the elementary, and a $250 donation from the Granville Indoor Farmers Market to Jim Redding's Environmental Club. So we very much appreciate those donations. And now I'll stop talking.
Any questions?
No.
I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's retiring. That's my neighbor Todd.
Thank you.
So I guess I'll have to see you out on the snow blower more then, huh?
Since I've had all of your children except Mike's, just be careful. I probably know more about you than you do about me.
Sounds ominous.
Okay, take it up, please.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Ms. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Renzel?
Aye.
Dr. Cornman?
Aye.
Okay, that moves us into the financial portion of our meeting.
Thank you. Start with the February financial report. We have a motion in a second. I'll go through it and show it now.
So moved.
Second.
If you look at the summary for the month, there's really not much going on. The big thing we're waiting on is the property tax settlement. We have not received it yet from the county. We should receive it in the next week or so. It's always here before the end of March. And that'll give us an idea, a better idea if we're very different from where I had been expecting. At this point, you can't really tell that. On the spending side, we were considerably below estimate for the month. That was primarily in the areas of purchase services and supplies, and it's because, really going back to January, when we were not forced to hold as many bills as I feared we would have to because of the cash flow situation. We were able to keep most of those current in January, so we did spend quite a bit less in February than we had been anticipating. Other issues, the preschool issue, which I brought up in the past, that has all been straightened out now, and is being done correctly. We are getting about $59,000 of funding for that. 47 of that goes on to the ESC for the students of ours that they are educating. We retain about $12,000 for 3 students who have speech issues only, who are instructed by our speech teachers. So we keep the money for them since they are not being provided to ESC.
How many students total are involved in those preschool programs?
We are being funded right now for 12 students. 9 are going to the ESC and 3 of them are being educated in the district. The state aid formula seems finally to have stabilized. We are still having issues we're still having issues, not here, but in other places, of reconciling enrollment to where we're having gaps between what we're calculating and what funded enrollment should be and what funded enrollment actually is. That seems to have everybody stumped at this point. If that ends up being an issue, the problem we're having right now is when you try and use the method we should be using, we are coming up with more students that are being funded. If that proves to be true, that means if those students get added back in, the state will become poorer. And we will become richer because we are not having that issue. We have a very small difference, and a lot of that is probably due to just enrollment that we've gotten since the October counting period. I don't know where that's headed right now. We think it's being looked into.
It affects our relative wealth then.
It could. It may not.
Yeah.
It may not, but it could. It may be something that we are all missing when we're trying to calculate it, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. The only part that's unknown of state aid is the catastrophic aid. That's something that comes once a year. We normally get it in the last week of the last payment in May or the first payment in June. It's for special ed costs that are above essentially the weighted funding amounts. Is that right? Yes. And I'm hoping we actually get more than we did last year because the state did sharply increase the appropriation for that line item in the budget this year. So hopefully we'll get more, but we really never know how much we're getting until the check shows up. Because we see no advance. We only know what we sent them, we have no idea how they're prorating it to send it back to us.
And what falls into that category?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
What falls into the catastrophic special ed category in terms of?
There's a threshold of dollars spent on any one particular student.
Okay.
So if, and it depends on what category they fall in as to what amount of money you're looking at, but it's 37,000 something and 42,000. So if the district would have spent beyond that 37 or 42, we can submit that to the state, and then they figure out what portion of that they're going to give back to us.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Going through the back pages on here, the first page again shows the results for the month of February that I already discussed. The revenues were pretty much right on target. As I mentioned, the expenditures primarily from purchase services and supplies were significantly under estimate. The next three graphs I think are good to look at so that you're aware of them. And what that shows is in our three major spending areas, where our spending is now, we're essentially through February, we're 2/3 of the way through the year. All else being equal, we'd expect to be about 2/3 of the way through our spending for the year. In each case, if you look at the second column from the right, you will see in personnel services, we are at 65.9% of our expected. You see the prior years, we're right around 66 to 66.5%. We're running slightly below there. So obviously we're in good shape for the year in the personnel expenditures. You look at the retirement and insurance benefits, it's the same situation. We're actually further behind than we were. That's actually a little bit misleading. It's because of the way that STRS is deducted and recalculated. It's recalculated beginning in January and reflecting our higher payroll now for the year. So instead of really getting spread out across the whole year, it's all kind of condensed into a shorter period of time. So the last 4 months will be higher than it was last year because of that. But by the end of the year, we still are expecting to be on target or below target with our spending in that area. And then purchase services, again, as tough it has been, we are only at just under 67% of our spending through the year, pretty much in line with where we were over the last 3 years. So we are kind of pretty much on target with where we think that spending is going to be.
It's a great way to look at the numbers, kind of eliminate surprises and things like that to see, okay, that's just one of those common sense checks, but
Are we trending the right direction?
that's good, right?
Yeah,
You know.
definitely.
Yeah, when we're looking at this, obviously, earlier in the year, when you're 4 months into the year, if you're 40% through your spending, when you're really 33% of the year, you probably want to know about that sooner rather than later.
Exactly.
I know, this gives a nice picture, I think.
Yeah.
It's easy to grasp. Right.
Yeah. And then finally, the last graph is the cash flow graph. Again, you can see we're obviously going forward in much better condition than we have been in for several years. Looking at net January 0 point actually being at about $1.5 million of balance, which is not too bad a place to be. It should grow from there for the year or two after that, as we get fully up into the new cycle with the levy. It gives me the flexibility to do longer-term investments. If we only had interest rates that made it worthy of doing longer-term investments, I would. That doesn't seem like a good choice right now to tie money up for long periods of time for very measly interest rates that we can get right now, rather than waiting and seeing if just the market rates increase, and so that we have a little more opportunity down the road to get a little bit better return. So that's report. Questions?
Any questions? Take the roll.
Mr. Denise?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Dr. Foreman?
Aye.
Thank you. 12.02 is the revised appropriation resolution for the year. Yes, you get a motion, and I will go through all of what's different.
So moved.
Second.
This is the first adjustment we have done since October. It's actually a little bit later than we normally do it. Usually we do one in January or February. I'm hoping, I waited a little bit longer, and I'm hoping we don't have to do another one, that the state has done changing our federal pass-through funding. There are 6 line items that are different than what was in the original appropriation, first appropriation back in October. The 6 are in the operating budget. The appropriation is higher by $239,740, which may sound like a weird number, but it is. This goes back to the amount that the operating budget owes the bond fund that we have decided to repay the bond fund finally this year, rather than continuing to carry that debt on our books. And that was not accounted for in the original appropriation for the year. So it's just upping it to make this one-time payment to get the debt off our books. The second big one, which is actually related to the next item on my agenda, is an increase in the bond fund appropriation, and this is to handle the paying off of the debt because of the refunding that we're going to be doing on June 1st. Well, part of what we're doing to save costs is, a lot of times what happens is it goes through an escrow, and escrow holds until the bonds are due, and we have to pay for that escrow account and the escrow agent. Because of the size of the issuance, and I promised I wouldn't forget to pay the payments on June 1st, we are actually going to be able to hold the money in our accounts. That will let us earn about a month or month and a half of interest on that money. It's not a lot of money, but it is creating money instead of paying out money. Not amounts, but because of that, because it's coming through our accounts, we have to have an appropriation then for me to be able to retire the bonds. The third item is our auxiliary funds. This is the pass-through money that comes to us from the state that we then pass on to Granville Christian and to Welsh Hills. The allocation to Granville Christian ended up being higher than we had anticipated for the year back in October. That is now done. We received the final payment for them in February. So we're just, they need to up that appropriation so that they can spend the money that's been allocated to them through the state. And the other 3 are related to our federal funds, our IDEA funds, which is for special needs students, our Title I for lower income students, and our Title IIA, which is primarily for professional development. Each of those allocations was increased by the state from the original ones that we received back in the fall. The Title IIA and the Title I were both pretty small. The IDEA, we did get an extra $17,000. That's good because that basically allows us to take $17,000 that we would be spending on salaries out of our operating budget for our 2 psychologists and to absorb that into the IDEA fund. So that is a nice savings, nice little savings for the district. So those are the 6 changes. Everything else in the resolution are the same levels of appropriation from October.
Questions?
No, thank you.
Bill?
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Dr. Quinn?
Aye.
Thank you. 12.03 is the resolution authorizing me to refinance the bonds come in June 1st. We get a motion, I'll go
So moved.
brief explanation.
Second?
We have $1.3 million of outstanding debt that is eligible to be called on June 1st, meaning we can retire the debt and reissue new debt in its place. Essentially, it's the same concept as refunding a mortgage. When you have refinancing a mortgage, when you have advantageous interest rates. This is actually an amount of money we've had the option of doing advance refunding of for several years. I thought it was not a good idea to do the advance refunding because of the interest rate levels and additional costs through what's called interest for the arbitrage, from negative arbitrage because of rates. That ended up proving to be a good choice, as our savings, our net from this is going to be probably about $128,000 total over 5 years. If we had done this a year and a half ago, it would have been between $55,000 and $60,000 over 6 years. So that ended up being a good choice to do. This resolution will just authorize me to call the debt, reissue the debt. All of this debt has maturity rate dates between now and the end of 2019. So that what we're calling, so the new debt has to expire by 2019. There's no longer term debt in this. And like I say, we're getting interest rate advantages from doing this.
And this, we bounced this off of the finance committee as well, and got their appreciation for it, and I think there's more of this to come as further long-term debt expires in the future.
We have most of the rest of our debt will be callable on December 1st of next year. That is not eligible for advance refunding because it already has been advance refunded. It was advance refunded back in 2007, and you can only advance refund something once. But it does have a December 1st, 2015 call date. And so basically, if interest rates remain stable over the next year and a half, it will give us the opportunity to have significant dollar savings, probably over, if they stay the same, we'll be able to save over $3 million over about a 15-year period by refunding a year and a half from now. Again, if interest rates are the same or relatively the same as they are now. But we just have to wait and see because there's nothing else we can really do about it at this point. Other questions?
No.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Cornman?
Aye.
Thank you. 12.04 deals with the Hoban Scholarship Fund. Get a motion and
So moved.
Second?
the Hoban Scholarship Fund has existed for quite a while. It is currently administered by the GEF. They have asked us to take over the fiduciary maintenance of the fund. That was approved by the GEF board last week, I believe, when they met. We have 3 or 4 other scholarship funds that we are administering in this method right now anyway. It's mostly a paperwork difference. The process for awarding the scholarship will not change. It it'll be awarded through the high school for $500 scholarships. But this just allows us to accept the fiduciary responsibility for the scholarship fund.
Questions?
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Dr. Cornman?
Aye. I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session to prepare for negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment.
Second.
Dr. Cornman?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Dr. Rentel?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
There will be no action taken after the executive session.